Well, good evening, Galleon. This is Mayor Tom O'Leary. Back. It's a Monday night, and we were just a minute or so late getting started. I was looking at the agenda for tomorrow night's meeting. It's kind of filled up with a number of first readings, and if time allows, we'll talk a little bit about those. What I'd like to do before we get started into any questions that are out there is to look backward to last weekend and note that there were two highly successful events. One being the community cleanup. I didn't keep the stats, but my understanding is over 200 residents came through. It's nice to know. We put a limit on tires. Maybe that, I didn't see too many people. In fact, folks that came must have read the directions not to bring more than 4. There were a few pickup trucks with 5. I tried to take somebody's spare and put it in the truck. They pointed out that they didn't want to donate that. But anyways, a really solid turnout. And as I've joked over the last month or two when that came up, it's not my favorite thing. Maybe I'll change that. It actually turned out to be a real positive day. And one quick story on that. In moving tires, tires being the thing out of a person's pickup truck, I'd taken my cell phone out because I didn't want to sit on it. Break. I left the doggone thing in the back of that pickup truck. Long story short, we were able to touch base with that resident. They were trying to call us, and we found this phone. So it was, that was a good thing. And then, I don't know, an hour later, I saw that same family, or parts of that same family, over at the depot day. And I think that part of the day was eating some lunch and getting on the train. So I think that was transitioning real solid. We can always tweak the community cleanup, and we'll sit down after this and debrief a little bit. But it was a really solid day. At some point, there'll be a picture of people. It was, for me, an all-time record. For me, what does that mean? For our experience, it was an all-time record of city employees turning out. So that's a real positive thing. So there's a non-socially distanced picture that was taken. I believe the only person that wasn't vaccinated was a volunteer, and I hope when that picture hits the internet that he'll have his mask on. That the young man wore it all day. So, anyways, over to Depot Day. Great success, largely because of that train. Those people who knew Dave Moore, and we talked about it one other time here, that Dave had arranged for that, back pre-COVID, to come and use that as a way to attract participation and such. And Dave, passed during that COVID year. And so the commitment was honored by I think it was Romick Amusements or something. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they were from Upper Sandusky. The only Romicks I ever knew were from Upper, but it was at where is that?
He's out of Findlay.
All right, out of Findlay, and that, in my view, really made the day. You have the rail buffs, and I was talking earlier today about looking at some of those white-haired people. Not to pick on white-haired people in any way, but it was funny to see mostly men wearing their Penn Central gear and shirts, proudly. And as a kid, I remember when they tried to put the New York Central and Pennsylvania railroads together. That was one of those classic oil and water. Now, 60 years later, these gentlemen who probably worked on the railroad were proudly remembering the Penn Central years. But anyways, it was, I think the kind of thing you would expect among people who want to preserve the depot and also are interested in passenger rail. So I won't get into passenger rail much. I will mention that a lot of folks around town, because he was, part of the town in a lot of ways, remember Jerry Lance. and his family made a presentation. They actually made it to the Friends of the Depot group, I think, but it was from the old Erie station, which you'd have to be almost as old as me to remember that. It's long since torn down, and unfortunately, not much else in that spot, but over off of Market Street. Anyways, they had a sign they donated. It has a galleon, and so for those rail memorabilia types, well, I'm quite confident that will be proudly displayed at the bus station job sharing life of the depot, which is getting closer and closer to becoming a reality, despite Amtrak. But anyways, great weekend. Vendors, people going through the depot. I had more than one person say that since there were a couple weekends where the two railroad support groups, for lack of a better term, had put a lot of hours into cleaning it up, and that was observed more than one time. How good it looked, how it's beginning to a lot of people have more or less vision, if you will, and those people who've had a vision that this thing could be rehabbed and put into useful activities. I think that vision is a lot closer, and we're going to work on it this year. And as I've said a bunch of times on this live stream, we're going to try to get SCAT in here, or we are going to get SCAT, the transportation agency, over there to set up an office and headquarters. So all that stuff's good news. Really good weekend in terms of community cleanup and the and the depot day. So one step at a time. And I just wanted to recognize. We could have put a list of the employees, but I think we'll post a picture. Again, warn you that's not socially distanced, and then you can identify the people in it versus. It's a little bit like a team photo without the caption of who's who. But anyways, a little over a dozen people here up near City Hall in the community cleanup, and then we had people out at Taylor Road. One quick thing before I leave, talking about last weekend, we're looking at whether or not we can't pull together another Taylor Road opening here in this late spring, early summer. I've noticed a lot of people are spending more time, for whatever reason, getting their yards cleaned up, and so if you missed it, then we're going to try to pick another weekend. So keep an eye or ear open on the websites, Facebook, wherever you find your information. Heck, even talk about galleons, a place to find information ranging from absolutely absurd to good information. So it's about all I'll say unless there are any questions. I thought a lot about, if there are questions, we'll go right to them. I thought a lot about a detailed commentary about a couple of the strands that were out on Talk About Galleon over the weekend. I'd prefer to not talk about it in a largely negative way, but we've looked at a lot of the assertions that were made, and there's always a backstory, which is kind of a popular term now. So without getting into the detail nitty gritty, unless somebody who has commented wants to bring it up again, we'll pass on that. The other thing I'd want to mention about a strand on the internet, and maybe this, I'm not quite sure how to interpret it, but there was a call for citizens to get a hold of their council members to comment on one of the piece of legislation up for a third reading. The rest of what's up tomorrow night are all first readings, and maybe if time allows, or if we go in that direction. But the third reading is around the funding of the infrastructure for the development north of Brant Road. I think there's a little bit of discussion about whether you're too nuanced. That's definitely not a galleon term, nuanced, but this issue of whether putting infrastructure out there is distinguished from a commitment from the Free Center I'll be honest. I think they're tied together, and in the best world, we'd build of the free center. We'd find a way to fund that, and we get that infrastructure out there. But I think it was last week I was talking a little bit about that is, it's a Route 30 interchange. There's 15,000. We just were checking on 598 traffic. What was that?
A little less, 12,000.
Yeah, 12,000. Just a politician's exaggeration. It's really 15,000. ODOT just doesn't know how to count. But anyways, there's 12 to 15,000 vehicles out there. That's a fair amount of activity, and 30, I think, is going to see more activity over the next handful of years. Be more growth out there in traffic. In any case, our ability to develop 598 without even getting into how are you, hey Mayor, how are you going to get 61 and 30 going? It's critical to start with to get 598 up and rolling. And for our site, our Galion area growth to take place, you're going to need infrastructure. Other than that, it looks like a bean field. It probably will be this summer. And so we really need to put the infrastructure in. That's what I've been saying for, gosh, I don't know, 5 years maybe. But in any case, tomorrow it'll be interesting to see. There was a call back to where I started, over the internet from one of the frequent, I think somebody who fancies themselves as an influencer using, it's not the Twitter influencer. We're more of a Facebook community. But it's somebody who tries to influence opinion, and they were asking everybody to call their council members. So we did a check here before. I don't think we didn't hear back from everyone, but the ones we heard back hadn't gotten much feedback. So I'm not sure if that's to interpret that nobody took that, or perhaps they didn't see that and talk about Galion. But any questions?
Not at this time.
All right, I'll stop the monologue to say that I don't want to be misinterpreted. Talk about Galion represents, I think, the best in how local internet can and the use of Facebook. It can be very positive, or it can be just as equally negative. And when posts are made that assert incomplete information, those kinds of things, in my view, represent, the internet and social media at its worst. When it allows for a forum and a discussion about important issues, I think that that represents, in a community without a newspaper and with an evolving media in terms of how locals get their information, so, like that neighbor, you both love them and hate them. I think I've been able to survive. My wife and I, we have one neighbor, so we only have to keep one neighbor happy. But the point being that some of the stuff on Talk About Galion as it relates to utility rates are they're false premises, and I'm just going to stop there and say, be careful what you read, ask a few questions. And we have anything yet?
Not yet.
This might be the shortest one in a long time, folks. That might be a good thing. I'd only tease a little bit more that there in one of the postings that, it's kind of funny. It must be an election year, because the postings and the public records request when there's municipal elections, it seems like they always come on Friday. So anyways, Friday evening there was a post that got some sort a number of comments on it, and so I'll just touch on one thing. There was a assertion that the storm sewer bill had been somehow changed on people. Well, the two examples that you saw, if you know what I'm talking about in terms of seeing on the internet, the two examples, the first one from 2020 was when the city council, candidly at the mayor's request, provided relief, a 90-day moratorium on stormwater. So when somebody posts from May of last year, I think was the month that there's no stormwater bill, that's because everybody wasn't charged. And then the idea popped up after many years in January. It's just like, wow, may want to consider the source and the accuracy of the information. So nobody popped a stormwater. What we probably didn't do is get up on the top of City Hall and pound our chests about how we had saved everyone money on their stormwater. It's $6 a month for us residents, but when you take the time to look at where that about $65,000 a month comes in stormwater, most of that is in the large employers with large parking lots and large rooftops. And maybe now, since most of them survived, almost all of them survived, maybe you don't remember where the relief was needed, and that was to assist the business community, and so just check your information a little bit more on their source. There's probably not going to be many calls tonight. There's probably like other things to do and such. The other thing that kind of ticked me off was this claim that the mayor's rate increase. When you go back, if you take the time to look at it, it doesn't make clear what rate increase. So I want to remind you that we haven't had an electric rate increase in a couple of years. In fact, the last time rates on electric were adjusted, they came down a little bit. Okay. There was in January a well-announced and discussed increase in water rates. And for a 4-unit user, which is kind of what your family of 4 would use, it's less than $7 a month. You know, heavens to Betsy, where'd that come? Nobody gets their thrills out of raising your rates. That suggestion somehow that City Hall wants to raise your rates, I'm just not going to put up with it. I'm not going to listen to this. I don't want the community subjected to this every weekend between now and November. So see this what it is. It's false premises. It's $7 if you use 4 units. The increase is not, $7 is $7. I'm not minimizing it, but this suggestion that there's a right to be wronged and that the city is assaulting our residents, our customers, and trying to raise rates. It's not going to put up with that. So it doesn't serve much of a purpose to get into it in all of those assertions. But I'll make one more comment, and then I'll sign off there on any questions. It's been, what did we find out today? 6 years. There's some stuff in the same strand I keep harping on about estimated billings. Come on. It's been 6 years since we estimated. And our meter reading staff and billing office, which usually they don't get much credit for the work they've done. Every time they would make a mistake transposing a number or something like that, you'd think the roof was caving in. It's a lot of data entry at the point of reading the meter. Any case, we haven't estimated any meters in 6 years. So what I don't want to happen is kind of a new word in this cancel culture world we live in. But I'm not going to allow a false premise, this narrative to be established that there's somebody outside of City Hall that's going to look out for you as a utility payer more than City Council or the Mayor's office. It's just not true, and I'm not going to sit back and allow that kind of misrepresentation of council and the interest, what we're trying to get done up here. And so, having said all that, maybe more than I should have, be cautious as you look at that stuff. If you have a problem with your bill, there's some claims in that strand about large bills and this and that. Anybody who has done that, called up at the city, they've been treated respectfully, and what the staff up there is trying to do is figure out a way to keep your utilities on and allow you to have a payment to catch up, which is manageable. So, heading off the next assault, criticism of the mayor, the people, the folks that work in the utility office are focused on trying to keep people turned on and trying to avoid having bills run up to an unaffordable level. So, any questions?
Nothing at this
All right.
time.
One more thing. I'm not going to go through the whole council agenda. It's A through J. The A is the third reading on that infrastructure ordinance I made reference to. The rest of them are new stuff. I don't want to take up more time if people are either not tuned in or aren't listening. But I would say that we're real close to getting an ordinance, and I'm not even sure, honestly, that we need an ordinance to appropriate or to move the money in the CARES Act account into a couple of categories. So there was a discussion at council committee. We'll probably review that again. And what we're going to try to do is find a vendor and do more of the utility rebate refund. And I don't want to detail it, but that's goal one. And then the other one is that businesses that have fought through this thick and thin, if you will, over the last year and a half, I think the decision with council's support will be to put a little bit more, probably no more than $2,500 back into a business grant program. And if that gets approval, we'll almost certainly run that through the Chamber of Commerce. They were very instrumental in using the county commissioner's money and moving it through the Chambers of Commerce to get the money to the businesses. So anyways, that's the last thing I'll say, that we're going to try to get those CARES Act dollars committed and get those spent down with the utility rebate program and with the business support effort. So anyway, some nights we have a bunch of questions and some nights we don't. And so with that said, if we don't have any more questions, and share this. There's some good information there, but I'll stop twisting your arm for a question, and thank everyone for tuning in, or people who will share it off the across the balance of the week. And those of my friends that thought I was going to get real angry and complain about this criticism or these observations on Talk About Galleon, I'm not going to do that. Like I said before, it has both, I think, represents the best in the local social media and sometimes the worst, and so you all have to decide yourselves. But all that being said, thanks for tuning in, and share this, pass it along to your friends. We'll see you next week.